So I was having myself a bit of a play, or for the kindergartners watching, I was having a bit of a play date. I don't want to leave you guys out. I want you guys to know what's up to. I was playing around with geometry nodes is the point, and I'm like, okay, I want to make fireflies. This probably is going to be a bit complicated. I don't know how to do. Well, 30 minutes later, and by 30 minutes, I mean 5 minutes later, I had a node system that works. So here's what we're making. We're making fireflies. You duplicate an object, you get more fireflies. You add in a cone, that has fireflies, and more so. We have complete control over this. So what do we have? We have how many fireflies do you want? The density, so you can make it kind of like a beautiful night sky. You can control the seed to get kind of different spreads. Speaking of spread, we have how far away does it deviate from the source meshes, and also the chaos. These are all things we can control, and I swear to God, this node network only takes like a couple minutes to make. Also, it works with geometry transformations. You make it taller, it works. It also works in cycles. In fact, it looks better in cycles. You know what? This is too much intro. Let's just get into it. We'll make it super fast. So, geometry nodes, make sure you have that. In other words, have one of the newer versions of Blender, and then head over into GeoNodes. What we're going to do is we are going to turn our cube into a GeoNodes group, and this is just going to be our like emitter, or you can think of this as our like fireflies object, okay? And for this, we're just going to be importing in geometry and then like using particles, not particles, but points to mimic fireflies. Okay, well, to do this, we need a source mesh. We're going to use a monkey. We're going to put this in its own collection. So just, select this, hit M, new collection. We're going to call this fireflies. And the way I want you to think about this is anything in this collection, this fireflies collection, is going to have fireflies. It's kind of like getting into the right line at Disney World, except the ride is fireflies. Okay. So this is our collection. In the emitter, what we're going to do is we're first going to reference this collection, obviously. So just bring in that collection info. Instead of just doing a bunch of objects, we can just use a single collection. We're going to use the fireflies collection. And the way I want you to think about this is anything we do to this is just going to emit fireflies. Before we do that, by the way, you're going to notice that if we look at the viewer, this just has a single instance of like everything inside here. We don't want that, okay? So make sure you use realize instances. It's going to convert everything inside this collection, whether it be one object or multiple objects, into stuff with geometry. Here you can see vertices, edges, whatever, okay? First order of business, let's distribute some points on the faces, because these are going to be our fireflies. So you can see we hide the things in the collection. We just get this. And also, if we were to take this and duplicate it, this is also going to have instances, and any object, again, that we add to this is also going to have instances. Just want to be clear for the dummies. Okay, so in the emitter, we now need to take these points and somehow manipulate them, have them move in a way that kind of looks organic. Well, to do this, we're going to take the points, we're going to run it through a set position. In other words, I want to take the position and change it, and we can use a custom expression for this. And we can use offset, by the way, which is already going to move our fireflies away from the mesh, which is what we want. We need a way to randomize this in a continuous way. And for those of you who watch my tutorials, in other words, superior humans, you already know. Noise texture, this is the way to do it. So noise texture is just going to give every single point referenced in this node. It's going to give each one of these a color or a vector, however you want to think about it. So we plug it in and you see, okay, well, it's definitely doing something, and it's definitely, scattering, and you can see how this might eventually create fireflies. But you can see everything's kind of clustering off to the side. Why? It's because noise texture generates a number between 0 and 1 for the X, Y, and Z axis. In other words, a vector between 0 and 1 on each axis, which is good, except it's going to kind of, on average, move everything by 0.5 off to the side. Either way, the way you correct this is you take vector math, and we say instead of like going from 0 to 1, we want it to go from like -1 to 1, or something that's more symmetric, right? If this is our object right here, we want some fireflies here, some here, not all of them over here, which is what's happening. So to do this, I'm just going to subtract by 0.5. Don't think about it too hard. It's just going to center this. Additionally, we can then take this and scatter it a bit more. So I'm going to take this subtracted vector, and I'm going to scale it by some number, let's say 3. So this is going to be our spread. And then finally, we add a bit of offset. So now when we animate this thing with a bit of a seed value, you can see it's working a bit better. And just to make sure that the fireflies stay more off the mesh, and offset kind of takes care of this, but just to make sure, I'm going to also add in the normal vector, which is going to move it outwards relative to the normal, which is a good thing. So let's animate this thing. Instead of keyframes, I'm just going to type in hash frame. That's the frame number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, divided by like 200, maybe even a bigger number. The bigger the denominator, the slower the motion. So maybe something like that, and we can make this look a bit better soon. But there you go. Let's see our Suzanne again. Looks like we have fireflies. We move them. It works. You duplicate it. Each one has its own system. Beautiful. Okay. Let's make this thing look good. First of all, we just have points. We don't actually have fireflies yet. So now that we've set the position, we're going to instance on points. What are we going to instance? Well, that's a good question. I mean, you could really make your fireflies anything. I hadn't really considered that, but you could make like cube fireflies. Basically, we're just picking what geometry you want. Now, naturally, if you're a normal human being, you're probably going to want to use a UV sphere. However, you could do whatever you want. So I'm just going to take a sphere, make it tiny, make it tinier, just keep dividing. That should be good. Make it about the right size, and also I'm just going to divide this, actually, I'm just going to pick some geometry amount that isn't too intense, especially if we want to have a lot of fireflies. This is the I'm going to stutter tutorial, isn't it? Either way, since the geometry is so low and you can actually see the facetting, I'm also going to run it through a set shade smooth node and enable that. So now these all look smooth. Final thing, scaling. I want to randomize it. You could either do this with like a random value. So each of these is going to have its own scale. But since we already have this noise texture, let's just use that. And this is going to make the scaling kind of relative to the motion as well. It's going to look good. So take this, plug it into scale, and boom, now we have fireflies of different sizes, and they're moving, and it's all good. So far, what do we have? Well, we have a density slider. So the lower this is, the less fireflies. The higher it is, the more fireflies, and they all kind of exhibit a similar behavior. We also have a seed value, just to get different variations. The motion is dependent on this noise texture, which we can also change the quality of. So for example, if we make the scale higher, it's going to give us a bit more chaos, like I showed we could control. The roughness is going to make it a bit more chaotic as well in a different way. We also have this spread amount. The larger it is, kind of the further out it's going to be, but also the faster these are going to move. So maybe you want to lower the scale here so that they're distributed, but, you know, slow in their own right. And other than that, you know, we also have like the average size of these spheres that's then going to be randomized. But most importantly, since this is all referencing a collection, again, anything in the Fireflies collection is going to inherit this. So you can see this is going to have it. If we transform the geometry, it's just going to redistribute the points to make it work. Dude, I remember I saw a guy like this walking down the street, and I told him, why the long face? Let's see. Either way, any geometry you want to add, it's going to work. And I guess now let's just talk about how to shade this thing. Because right now, if we were to go to Eevee or cycles, it doesn't really matter. It's just going to be spheres. So to make this look good, final order of business is we've instanced the points, all this. We just want to have this thing have a material. So I'm going to go to set material. And this is going to be only for the instances, right? It's not going to be for the object itself, which is good because we want the fireflies to glow, but not this. So I'm going to give this a material. First of all, we got to make one. Call this one Fire. Reference that material so that anything, if I can actually find my nodes, anything we do to this is going to be inherited by all those instances, the spheres. And obviously, what we want to do for this, just emission, and we want to make that emission yellowish orange, something like that. Make it glow way brighter. And if you're in Eevee, make sure to enable bloom to get kind of the most out of your fireflies. And again, because we randomize the scale, by the way, it's going to work that the smaller fireflies are going to emit less light because they have less surface area. Whatever. But if you go to cycles, you can see it's actually going to illuminate our surface. And especially if we take this and set it to GPU so I don't destroy this computer. But if we take the background, make it black, this is going to be a major source of light. Also, one more thing I want to just point out is since we're using this noise texture as the scale, we could have a bit more control over this by sending this through a map range. And this is going to let us have a bit more, how do I want to say this? A bit more control over our scale. So if I can bring down this input it would make all of them larger. If I bring it up, some of them are going to be very tiny. Some of them can be very big. So I've just kind of made this higher contrast so that, you know, there's a bit more variation going on. And I want to bring down the average size. You could just play around with that, but you can see it's actually illuminating our thing, and it's going to look pretty realistic once you add in the motion blur and all that. So it doesn't just look like spheres, but more like streaks and stuff like that. And additionally, I mean, all the stuff I talked about before, you bring up the density, it's going to be very bright for our boy. You duplicate the object, rotate it, whatever, it works. I don't think I have much more to say about it. So, Fireflies, there you go. And now we're at the point in the tutorial where, I don't know, how long have we been going? I'm not sure. Hopefully not that long. I mean, it wasn't that many nodes. Either way, we're at the part of the tutorial where I want to thank all the patrons. So thank you, patrons. There's something like 740 of you. You are funding this channel, also the CG Matter channel, and letting me make tutorials all the time, like this little one. So what do you get, a viewer who made it to the end of the tutorial, who isn't a patron, but could be? What do you get if you join, if you click that link in the description? Well, you get early access to tutorials, so you can watch tutorials a couple days early, or usually just a day early. Kind of depends what my backlog is. So you could watch tutorials early. Also, I make exclusive tutorials just for patrons. Usually those are CG Matter videos that I flesh out with tutorial series. So you could watch, there's been a bunch of tutorial series posted at this point, so you could just go back through the catalog. Also blend files, so you're going to get the final blend for this project, the one with all the parameters and all that. You could just, you know, download it, attach it to your thing. You don't have to make it yourself, just use the parameters. Also Patreon, newsletter, Discord, etc. But check it out if you want to support either of these channels. I'd really appreciate it. And you do what you want, though. That's most important. So thanks for watching. Hopefully you learned something. Bye.